The morning sun streamed through my kitchen window, hitting the small potted basil plant I'd bought the week I moved here. Oregon light was different from Virginia light, clearer, sharper, like it was trying to prove something. I was halfway through my first cup of coffee when my phone buzzed on the counter, the screen lighting up with a number I hadn't seen in months. I almost let it go to voicemail, but habit had its claws in me. I swiped to answer. Lorena, my mother's voice cut through without a greeting. We need you to come home next month. Felicity's wedding is in 3 weeks, and it's important you're there. I set my mug down slowly. Why? There was a short, incredulous laugh on her end, as though I'd asked why oxygen mattered. Her fiancé's parents are very traditional. Family is everything to them. They need to see we're a united front, a perfect family. The words perfect family rolled around my mind like a bad joke. I'm not coming. The silence that followed was sharp enough to taste. You're her sister, she said, her tone tightening. You can't just I can. And I am. Her voice dropped lower, the way it always did before the scolding came. If you don't show up, you'll regret it. 8 months of distance pressed between us like a wall. I leaned back against the counter, looking at the morning sky beyond my balcony. I've lived across the country for almost a year without you noticing. Why start caring now? Her inhale was quick, almost startled. What are you talking about? I let the question hang there, the unspoken truth heavy in the air. Enjoy the wedding. Mom. Before she could answer, I ended the call, my finger steady on the screen. For a moment, the apartment was so still I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. I picked up my coffee again, but it had gone cold. Somewhere in Virginia. They were probably already talking about how ungrateful I was. I turned my phone face down, the sunlight now warming the back of my hand, and thought about the last day I'd left everything behind. 8 months ago, my old apartment looked like the aftermath of a yard sale no one showed up for. Boxes stacked in uneven towers, the couch half covered in folded blankets, the kitchen stripped bare except for the coffee maker I refused to part with. Marcus knelt by the bookshelf, sliding paperbacks into a box, while Jenna taped up the one marked kitchen. You're really doing this, Jenna said, her voice equal parts pride and disbelief. Really doing it, I confirmed, shoving another sweater into a vacuum bag. They both knew why I hadn't told my parents. I didn't need another performance of fake concern before they turned the conversation back to Felicity. Just like they had my entire life. I remembered being 8, standing at the dinner table with my blue ribbon from the state science fair. I'd built a model volcano that didn't just spit baking soda foam, it mirrored real volcanic activity patterns. My teacher had called home, said it was exceptional. My parents barely glanced at the ribbon before turning to gush over Felicity's choir recital, where she'd sung one of 12 sopranos. At 12, I made the honor roll every semester. No one mentioned it at dinner. A month later, when Felicity's volleyball team made regionals, Dad bought a brand new grill and threw a block party. By the time I turned 18, I thought maybe college would be my moment. Instead, they sat me down and explained the financial reality they'd already spent the education fund on Felicity's private university. I'd have to figure it out myself. So I did. Full scholarship in computer science, 2 part-time jobs for everything the scholarship didn't cover, summers in cramped apartments with roommates who became more like family than my own blood. Invitations to Christmas and Thanksgiving stopped coming. My phone buzzed only on my birthday. The same bland text every year. I didn't chase them. I didn't ask for anything. And standing in that half-packed apartment with Marcus and Jenna, I realized I'd never go back to being the person who waited for them to notice me. The day I left Virginia, I closed that door for good and opened one 1,000 miles away. The first morning in Portland, I woke to the sound of rain against the windows. Not the heavy, punishing kind we got in Virginia, but a soft, steady rhythm that felt almost like a welcome. My apartment wasn't much one bedroom, outdated cabinets, and a living room just big enough for a small couch and a desk, but when I stepped out onto the balcony, the view made up for everything. Mountains in the distance, their peaks still streaked with snow, framed by a skyline that felt both alive and unhurried. The job had been worth the move. A mid-sized tech company where my input mattered, and no one treated me like I was lucky just to be in the room. My team was collaborative without the constant undercurrent of competition I'd gotten used to in past roles. Even my manager, Dana, checked in not to micromanage but to make sure I had what I needed to succeed. Best of all, no one here knew my family. No awkward questions about holiday plans. No sidelong glances when I admitted I hadn't seen them in years. My absence from their lives was total, and I planned to keep it that way. The one exception was Grandma Winslow. Every Sunday, like clockwork, I'd see her name flash across my screen. She never asked why I left, never tried to convince me to return. Instead, she celebrated every small win: my first client project, my weekend hike, even the basil plant on my balcony. "That's lovely. Lorena," she'd say, her voice warm through the line. "You're building something for yourself. I'm proud of you." Her words always landed somewhere deep, in a place years of indifference had tried to hollow out. I didn't tell her how much I needed them. I think she already knew. By the time 8 months had passed, the rhythms of my new life felt settled morning coffee with the mountains, work that challenged me without consuming me, quiet weekends where my phone stayed blessedly silent. I thought I'd built something untouchable. And then, one Tuesday morning, my mother's voice cut straight through it. 2 days after that first call, my phone lit up with Mom's number again. I considered ignoring it, but a part of me wanted to hear just how far she'd go this time. "Lorena," she began, tight and clipped. "I don't know what's gotten into you, but you need to think about your family. This wedding is important. People will notice if you're not there." "I'm not going," I said, keeping my voice even. She exhaled sharply. "You're making a mistake you'll regret." Felicity's fiancé comes from a respected family. They expect everyone to be there, looking united. "This is not just about you, Mom," I said slowly. "I've been living in Oregon for 8 months. Did you even know that silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped?" When she finally spoke, her voice was sharper, more brittle. "What are you talking about? You moved across the country without telling us yes, and you didn't notice. That should tell you everything." The rest of the call was a familiar cycle guilt about abandoning family, veiled threats about not being welcome back, and a half-hearted attempt at bribery. "We'll cover your flight if you just come." I ended it before she could get to the tears. Within hours, my phone was buzzing with messages. Dad, with his short commands, "Call your mother," Mom, with her long paragraphs of emotional leverage, Felicity, with a syrupy, "I miss you," Lore, "It's been too long." For a second, I almost believed her. Then came the next line. "It would mean so much to have you here. The in-laws want to meet everyone." There it was, my role reduced to a prop in her perfect family performance. I blocked her number without replying. The quiet afterward felt heavier than it should have, but it was still better than the noise they brought. I thought that would be the end of it until Grandma called, when I saw Grandma's name on the screen. I answered before the second ring. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, her voice as warm as the sun on my balcony. "How's my Oregon girl doing?" "I'm good. Grandma, just fielding some calls," I said carefully. She chuckled softly. "I know. Your parents asked me to call you. They think I can talk some sense into you." I tensed, bracing for the pitch. But then she said, "I told them I wouldn't push you. You're an adult. You make your own choices." Relief loosened something in my chest. "Thank you." There was a pause, the kind that felt like she was choosing her words with care. "Lorena, I've been watching this family dynamic for years. I've seen how your father treats you compared to Felicity. I've tried. Lord knows I've tried to get him to see it. He doesn't want to hear it. He says I'm imagining things. Her voice wavered, and for a moment I could hear the weight she carried, being the only one willing to acknowledge the truth. I know you've been hurt, she went on. But I want you to understand something. You're not wrong for keeping your distance. You're not wrong for saying no. What you're doing, it's breaking a cycle that's been going on longer than you've been alive. I swallowed hard, staring at the mountains in the distance. It's not easy. No, she agreed, but it's necessary. And I'm proud of you for it. Proud of the life you're building, the independence you've fought for. That takes strength. Her words hit a place I didn't realize was still raw. You've always been in my corner, I said quietly. And I always will be, she replied without hesitation. You're my granddaughter. That's supposed to mean something. We talked for another half hour about my job, the basil plant on my balcony, and the new hiking trail I'd found. Not once did she bring up the wedding again. When we hung up, I sat there for a long time, the phone still in my hand, thinking about how rare it was to be understood without having to explain yourself. The next time my phone rang, it wasn't her voice. I heard it was hers telling me what happened after the wedding. The call came the evening after the wedding. I was curled up on the couch with a blanket and a glass of wine when Grandma's voice came through, low and deliberate. Well, she began, your absence didn't go unnoticed. I leaned back, ready for the play-by-play. What happened? They tried to cover for you at first, she said, told the bride's family you were sick. Then later, they claimed you had to work, and by the reception, the story had changed again. You were traveling for business. I could picture it perfectly, my parents swapping excuses depending on who was listening, all of them equally unconvincing. And they bought it, not a word of it, Grandma said with a dry laugh. One of your cousins was talking to the bride's mother over dinner. Let slip that you'd been gone from Virginia for months, and no one in the family really kept in touch with you. The woman asked a few more questions, and by the time dessert came, she'd heard enough to know something wasn't right. I imagined the scene Felicity's new in-laws, faces politely composed but eyes sharp, putting the pieces together. They figured out the favoritism I asked. Oh, they figured it out. She said, and they didn't like it one bit. There was a conversation before the night ended, pointed questions about why they'd never met you, why Felicity seemed to be the only child who mattered. Your parents got defensive. And, well, the mood shifted. Everyone could feel it. I pictured Felicity in her white dress, smiling too hard, scanning the crowd for backup that wasn't coming. My parents with their tight, brittle grins, the bride's parents watching, measuring, judging. A slow warmth spread through me. Not joy. Exactly. But the solid satisfaction of knowing the truth had slipped past their control. I hadn't raised my voice, hadn't even set foot in the room. And still, their perfect image had cracked. Sounds like it was an eventful day, I said, letting the corner of my mouth turn up. That's one way to put it. Grandma replied, and something tells me it's not over yet. She was right. The days after were about to get much louder. The first text came the next morning, Felicity's name flashing across my screen. You made me look bad in front of his parents. They're questioning everything now. Do you realize what you've done? I deleted it without replying. But more followed accusations, guilt trips, even a half-hearted plea about fixing this together. By the third day, my parents joined in. Mom sent paragraphs about family loyalty. Dad sent short bursts of irritation. All of it went unanswered. It was strange how quickly their panic had shifted from keeping up appearances to making me the scapegoat, as if my absence, not their years of blatant favoritism, had caused the cracks everyone could now see. By the end of the week, I'd had enough. I changed my number, sent the new one only to people I trusted, and updated my email filters to catch anything with their names. Then I went further, scrubbed my address from every online listing I could find, tightened my social media until it was nothing but a locked shell. With that done, The noise finally stopped. In its place was quiet, the kind I could breathe in. I poured all my energy into work, picking up extra projects and volunteering for assignments that would make my portfolio stronger. 3 months later, I sat across from my manager as she slid a new contract toward me. A raise significant enough to shift my goals from someday to soon. I signed it with steady hands, already running the numbers in my head. Every extra dollar went into savings. I cut expenses where I could, not out of necessity, but out of focus. I wasn't just working toward financial security. I was building something tangible, a space that would be mine in every sense. By the end of the year, I was ready to make it real. I started looking for a house. A year after I'd left Virginia behind for good, I stood on the porch of a small craftsman-style house, the keys warm in my palm. The late spring air carried the scent of blooming lilacs from the side yard, and for the first time in my life, the space in front of me wasn't borrowed or temporary, it was mine. 3 bedrooms, a kitchen with enough counter space to actually cook, and a garden that caught the morning sun. I'd chosen every detail carefully, not just for practicality, but for the quiet promise it held. No one had the power to take it from me. There was no shared title, no cosigner, no whispered reminder of who had helped me get here. The deed had my name alone. Inside, the rooms were still bare, the echo of my footsteps following me from space to space. I didn't rush to fill them. This house wasn't about appearances. It was about building a place that felt like safety, a place I could choose to open to the right people. I pictured Marcus and Jenna laughing around at the dining table, Grandma sitting in the sunny front room with a cup of tea. I pictured weekends where the only noise was the wind through the garden trees, no phone calls breaking the peace. That night, I slept on a mattress in the living room, the windows open to the cool air. I woke before sunrise and watched the light move across the walls, touching every corner like it belonged there. I knew exactly who I wanted to see this house first. Grandma arrived on a Friday afternoon, stepping out of the cab with her small suitcase and a smile that reached her eyes. She paused on the porch, taking in the house. "It's beautiful." "Lorena," she said, and the pride in her voice was enough to make my throat tighten. We spent the first evening in the kitchen, cooking side by side. She chopped herbs while I stirred a pot of soup, the air filling with the scent of garlic and rosemary. Later, we carried our bowls to the porch and ate as the sky turned gold. The garden quiet except for the rustle of leaves. The next morning, we walked through that garden together, her hand brushing over the lavender and mint. "You've made something here," she said softly. "Not just a home, a life." That night, sitting in the living room with mugs of tea, she spoke about my childhood, how she'd tried to encourage me without stepping on my parents' pride, how she'd quietly sent me links to scholarships and called just to ask about my day. "I wish I could have done more," she admitted. "You did enough," I told her, "more than anyone else." She looked at me for a long moment before saying, "You chose peace. Lorena, you could have chased their approval forever, but you didn't." "I've never been more proud of you." When she left on Sunday afternoon, I stood on the porch watching her cab pull away, the house behind me warmer for having her in it, and I knew exactly where the line was between the family I was born into and the family I would keep. After Grandma's visit, the house felt different, not emptier, but settled, as if her presence had anchored something in its walls. I slipped easily back into my routine mornings with coffee in the garden, days filled with work that challenged me without consuming me, evenings with friends who showed up because they wanted to, not because they had to. The quiet was no longer something I guarded out of fear of it being broken. It was mine, woven into the fabric of the life I'd built. Sometimes, when I was alone in the kitchen or walking through the garden at dusk, I wondered how things might have been if my parents had treated me differently if they'd seen me, valued me, made me feel like I belonged. But the thought never lingered long. The truth was, Their neglect had forced me to grow in ways comfort never would have. I had a career I was proud of, friendships built on trust, and a home that was entirely my own. I had the freedom to choose who crossed my threshold and who stayed outside it, and most importantly, I had kept the one family bond worth holding on to, the one person who had proven that love doesn't have to be loud to be real. I didn't need anything from the rest of them, not their approval, their apologies, or their explanations. My life was full without it. I closed the door that evening, knowing it would stay that way